Water from a bear. Dustin Higgs is sentenced to be murdered by the United States government on January 15th, 2021, 8 days from today. In his case, the man who actually murdered the three women was sentenced to life in prison. In an affidavit by the same man, Willis Haynes, he confirmed that Dustin Higgs did not threaten him or force him to shoot the women. Lisa Montgomery and Corey Johnson are sentenced to be killed on January 12th and January 14th. Lisa suffers from brain damage from beatings as a child and serious mental illness. Corey Johnson has an intellectual disability from physical and emotional abuse when he was a child. In less than 2 weeks, 3 people will be murdered by the government of the United States. I am going to go through a plethora of reasons why you should oppose the death penalty for more than these scheduled executions. You will probably go to look at an anime or a hentai halfway through because you can't handle the truth, which is actually very reasonable because the truth is tough and it makes me sad. I'll also go through a few things that you can do more than just sharing an Instagram story because you feel the social media pressure of conformity to share information for 24 hours so you won't look bad because you reposted something from Feminist, which is run by 2 white businessmen. The death penalty is a cruel and unjust punishment. The premise itself, that the state can condemn murder but then commit it when it sees fit, is contradictory. It's as if Akini Glasgow was having a pool party and said, okay, no one take a shit in my pool. Now, the bulk of people never really wanted to take a shit in the pool. Taking a shit in the pool of hypothetical is an analogy for killing. Some people have unfortunate circumstances. Maybe they have IBS or just ate anything from Chefette or Pizza Boys, but they still don't want to take a shit in the pool. For Akini to go and take a massive colostomy bag full cardboard brown smell of rotten eggs and hobbit feet enormous ass dump in the pool doesn't teach anyone a damn lesson. Yes, Akini Glasgow can. He's done it before, but that doesn't mean it's not fucked up because no one should be shitting in the pool. The death penalty is often used within skewed justice systems. In many cases recorded, people were executed after being convicted in grossly unfair trials on the basis of torture-tainted evidence and with inadequate legal representation. In some countries, death sentences are imposed as mandatory punishment for certain offenses, meaning that judges are not able to consider the circumstances of the crime or of the defendant before sentencing. Fuck. Just walk in there, I don't know, you stole a goat or some shit, and these motherfuckers say death without even looking. Is it a crime to steal a goat, to feed your family, or to steal a goat, to sell that goat, to buy some weed? Goat. The death penalty is also used as a political tool. The authorities in some countries, for example Iran and Sudan, pause, use the death penalty to punish political opponents, not pause. Aside from these fucked up reasons, the death penalty shouldn't be used because it's ineffective. Disclaimer. The aims of sentences and definitions I'm taking from A2 Criminal Law and Justice Study and Revision Guide by Sarah Davies and Karen Phillips and Louisa Walters. Written by 3 women, which is pretty cool. Fuck the patriarchy. There are 5 aims of sentencing. This is a thumb. Retribution, or punishment. The classic aim of sentencing mandates that a sentence must be meted proportionate to the crime which has been committed. So, no life in prison for drunk driving. It's an okay burp. Deterrence. There's individual and general deterrent. Individual deterrence is to stop an offender from offending again. General to stop others committing a crime by making an example of the offenders. Protection of society. Protection of society refers to making sure the general public are safe from an offender. An example of such sentence is a driving ban for a bad driver, which, while I do not technically have, I think it should be at least considered. Because I have driven for 2 years and I've had 3 accidents, and of my 3 accidents, 2 was with pavements. And all that I'm saying is rehabilitation. This is changing the offender so they don't commit a crime again. It's to make the offender a better person in the hope they will make society a better place. And reparation. This means paying back to society what you've taken away. This relates to monetary amounts typically. For example, when Willis Haynes, who killed the 3 women in the Dustin Higgs case, was sentenced to life in prison, he was also ordered to pay the cost of the 3 women's funerals. I feel like it's all pretty self-explanatory. Just an immediate fucking look will tell you it's a little bit difficult for someone to be able to either pay reparations or be rehabilitated when they're dead. And I'm not saying it's impossible, I know they need to be reincarnated first, either in a Frankenweenie kind of way or in a zombie way. Now, even if the science supports it, I don't think either type of reincarnated person will be the most adept at heeding goals of sentencing. Because Frankenweenie was just a regular ass dog. He just wanted to chase sticks and shit. But I don't know. I never finished that movie. Whereas zombies are after brain every second of their life. Deterrence is often seen as the most important aim of sentencing, but the death penalty does not deter crime. An easy to go to regional example of this is in Barbados, where 3 persons were hanged in 1984, and in 1985 the murder rate went up. On top of that, the executioner needed psychological help for years. Hello? This exact same trend is seen every time the death penalty is repealed. The homicide and capital offences go down. I don't understand why, but I can tell you to have a look at the link in the description. deathpenaltyinfo.org/Bush did 9/11 or whatever. It's in the description. To recap, in a perfect world where every judge and jury make the right decisions, the death penalty is still not a deterrent, doesn't rehabilitate or allow reparations to be paid to the society. Now, a perfect world will not have the death penalty, but I'm not going to hypothesize my hypothetical with philosophical theoretical. We don't live in a perfect world. Judges and juries too often make wrong decisions. No one should have to die unrightfully, especially at the hands of a judicial system. Lena Baker did. In 1945, she was executed in Georgia because there was a man who locked her in a mill for days at a time. One night, he came at her with a pistol and there was a tussle, and she shot him in self-defense. An all-white, all-male jury convicted her and sentenced her. This happened to Ed Johnson too. Arrested for sexually assaulting a white female in Tennessee in 1906. The victim was allegedly knocked unconscious with a leather strap. Johnson became a suspect when a witness claimed to have seen Ed Johnson carrying a leather strap, although he denied owning one. He provided numerous alibi witnesses at the trial. He was convicted and he was sentenced to death. The US Supreme Court granted a stay of execution, but a racist mob broke through the jail and lynched him. A comprehensive study of the death penalty in North Carolina found that the odds of receiving a death sentence rose by 3.5 times among those defendants whose victims were white. Joe Arridy was a 23-year-old mentally disabled person who was accused of murder and rape of a 15-year-old girl. He was interrogated by the police without an attorney present and confessed with several different stories, the first being that a club was used in the murder. When the authorities told him they found an axe at the crime scene, his testimony changed to encompass this. There's also a lack of reliable evidence of Arridy even being at the murder scene with convicted Frank Aguilar. 3 psychologists declared him insane and said that he was incapable of distinguishing between right and wrong and therefore be unable to perform any action with a criminal intent. He achieved an IQ of 40, but this didn't change the sentence when his lawyer appealed on grounds of insanity. He spent his days on death row playing with a toy train given to him by the prison warden, and for his last meal, he asked for ice cream. When the warden explained to him that he was going to be executed, he said, No. Joe won't die. Judges and juries can make mistakes, but a ridiculous number of juries are all white through selection by district attorneys and errors, which have been systemically not selecting people of color for more than 140 years. I'll put a link in the description to a John Oliver video where he discusses it. It becomes much worse when judges and juries make mistakes which end in the life of an innocent person being lost. That information isn't new to the United States lawmakers. They've had several studies confirming this. The United States government knows that jurors in Washington are 3 times more likely to recommend a death sentence for a black defendant than for a white defendant in a similar case. In Texas, the state with the lowest cost for capital punishment, a death penalty case costs an average of $2.3 million, about 3 times the cost of imprisoning someone in a single cell at the highest security for 40 years. They know that in Louisiana, the odds of a death sentence were 97% higher for those whose victim was white than for those whose victim was black. A study in California found that those convicted of killing white people were more than 3 times as likely to be sentenced to death as those convicted of killing black people, and more than 4 times as likely as those convicted of killing anyone of Latino descent. In 96% of states where there have been reviews of race and the death penalty, there was a pattern of either race of victim or race of defendant discrimination, or both. A report by the National Research Council titled Deterrence and Death Penalty stated that studies claiming that the death penalty has a deterrent effect on the murder rates are fundamentally flawed and should not be used when making policy decisions. That was in 2012. Consistent with previous years, the 2014 Uniform Crime Report showed the South had the highest murder rate. The South accounts for over 80% of executions. The Northeast, which has less than 1% of executions, had the lowest murder rate. The state should not have the death of any innocent person on its conscience. Since 1973, more than 160 prisoners sent to death row in the USA alone have been later exonerated or released from death row on the grounds of innocence. Others have been executed despite serious doubts about their guilt. Dustin Higgs. Dustin Higgs is about to become another number in that statistic if everything continues as planned. His lawyers argue that the main evidence against him at trial came from a dubious witness who was a cooperating co-defendant and who received a substantial deal in order to implicate him. Dustin Higgs has coronavirus. He might spend his final days unable to see his family and struggling to speak to defend himself against a judicial system which has never been anything but cruel to him. Dustin Higgs is a man that the state recognized never killed anyone, never threatened anyone, and is sentenced to be killed in 8 days. In the description, I'll include sources to the facts that I used, 2 petitions for Dustin Higgs to not be murdered, and a link to some petitions with Amnesty International. Make sure and comment how much you hate the conquistadores. The fabric of society is being torn apart at the seams by police, social media, and Americans.